Good afternoon, esteemed traders and investors. Today is Monday, November 24th. I present to your attention another market review for Forex. As always, I'm glad to be here with you today. Last week, many of our ideas worked out, ideas aimed at strengthening the US dollar. Congratulations to those who participated. I filtered the news for this week. Today is Monday and there are no important news releases tomorrow. Among the important news tomorrow, we have PPI and in general, quite a few other indices in the evening at 1630 and 1800. On Wednesday, for the dollar, we have GDP, core orders, initial jobless claims. All of this will be released at the same second, along with new home sales at 1800. So it's going to be interesting. On Friday, there's no news for the dollar, and that's basically it. So, the most eventful news day is Wednesday, and that's also when the New Zealand rate decision will be announced, which is expected to be lowered. Let's take a look at what we can trade on the charts. Let's go. So, we have a new trading week ahead, and of course, we begin our analysis with the weekly time frames. Let's start with gold. Gold closed last week with an inside bar pattern, specifically a spinning top as it's commonly called. Interestingly, last week's low did not break the previous week's low. I think this is a bit of a trap for buyers, so in this case you could try playing to the downside. We didn't quite reach the short breakdown last week. We ended up with this kind of neat, tidy bar. So here I'm showing you. Here's the start of the week before last, or rather, the low point at the start and the low point of last week, and they weren't broken. So, this is a target for selling. If you were buying at the lows, you can, in principle, still hold on to your purchases for now, essentially for the time being. But at the very least, set your stop loss at break-even from the long breakdown zone. Still, based on the analysis of the extremes, I think there should at least be false breakouts here. There's nothing much to rely on for new shorts yet, except maybe for the breakdown that happened on Friday evening right here. But unfortunately, the Asians have already tested it. So, those who entered earlier with a stop loss, well, at least at 1,600, are already in profit, 2,000 to 3,000 points. What's strange? What's strange is that gold is moving very smoothly, holding on to its small short breakdowns. Here's one, a second one, and here's a third. Below, the long breakdown is only here, and it was already tested on Friday. So it's moving downwards quite technically, little by little. And if the Friday high is broken, then the trend will change and we'll need to rely on the long positions. Right now, the short from Friday is in control, and that's not very good news for buyers.
Looking for real trading advantages? Forex offers the lowest spreads and commissions. On major currency pairs, our conditions are better. Lower spreads and only $5 commission instead of $7. That's real savings for every trader. And now, let's get back to the market review.
The euro-dollar pair. The weekly time frame closed with a beautiful engulfing pattern. This is a continuation pattern for the downward movement. In other words, last week engulfed the previous 2 weeks, and all of this is happening within an overall bearish trend. Accordingly, this is a strong signal for the continuation of the downward movement. What can we rely on in our attempts to short? By the way, the long break zone has already been worked out. Those who trade one-to-one with a 300 stop, the instrument is currently giving 270, a little more. Basically, a one-to-one trade on this long break will be completed. So, we had an engulfing pattern. That's great. There was a bounce from the long break zone. Those who caught it, well done. What should new, freshly minted traders do? On the 4-hour chart, there's actually nothing to rely on. Let's dive into the 50-minute chart. On the 50-minute chart, our long break zone is a bit higher, so let's throw on a clean template. There's a break from Friday here that could have been used for selling, and the next one will be right here. So the plan is to short a bit above the current levels, with a stop order just above Friday, but with a take profit target at last week's low, which is right here. So this is the kind of move we get. With a stop of 200, you can take about 600, and plan B is to go for the Friday high. We run into the break from November 19th, and with a stop of 300, we take these 900. So again, it's 3-to-1. Overall, that's roughly the scenario. I think you can see it quite clearly.
I also want to remind you that every Forex client automatically receives loss insurance. For every $1 of compensation, only $4 of your friend's investments are required. Just submit a request, and your losses will be recovered. Let's continue with the review.
pound-dollar pair is also correcting gradually and steadily. Last week there was a similar pattern on the euro, though it was not as nice or as clean, to be honest. But you could say the short trend definitely continues. It's kind of an engulfing pattern, kind of not hard to say for sure. Right now we're seeing a long correction happening here. All of this is also moving from a long breakdown, just like with the euro. There is, however, a range left at the bottom between last week's lows, which remains important. For shorts, you could probably rely somewhere around here. There's something like that on the H4 chart. Here, they tried to break down, meaning at this point there was a reversal of the long trend, and this short trend, accordingly, is roughly the same as with the euro, following a very similar pattern overall. Let me remind you that essentially you're all playing against the dollar either through the euro-dollar or the pound-dollar pairs. But on the dollar, on the 15-minute chart, what can you rely on here? It's not as technical here as it is with the euro. I don't even know what to say. There was a short setup here and it played out very sluggishly. Here's that range at the bottom. Maybe they'll form something here and we'll be able to rely on that.
With InstaForex, you can triple your profit. For every $4 of your friend's investments, you automatically get an extra $1 added to your profit, with no extra conditions.
And the Australian dollar to US dollar pair really pleased us last week. There were excellent moves from the short breakdown zone. Everything was falling. By the way, one of my trades was pretty technical in my opinion, and it worked out. With a stop of 150, we actually took 900. According to the pure patterns, here's what's happening. Here we also have an engulfing, but unlike the previous instruments, stops were taken out here, even from October. However, the August stops were not cleared here, so I believe the movement could still continue after a small pullback. We have an engulfing on the weekly chart, and after a slight pullback, you could look for shorts further down, as there is something to rely on. On the H4, the drop happened at the end of the week, and here we see a short breakdown zone. In fact, we are already standing right on it, you could say. But even if you short from the current levels, your stop would be about 340 and your take profit would be around 600, which is a 2-to-1 ratio. On the 15-minute chart as a support. Well, here it is, here it is. Yes, this is quite a technical instrument that moved down. This happened, by the way, and here too was a good short, quite technical. You really need to look for setups like these and everything will work out well for you. But if you want even better prices, then right here, if you enter here, that would, of course, be the very best option, right here. This way, with a stop in this area, you have about 200, and the take profit will go up to around 700. That's a good risk-reward ratio, so it's worth waiting for. From the current levels, the stops are a bit large, about 2-to-1.
We also have a great offer. Fund your account and get a 30% tradable bonus. Trade with additional capital and expand your opportunities with InstaForex.
That's all. Trade with InstaForex, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for new reviews.